Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs. I moved out of that group when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 8 years and have 2 beautiful babies.
Yes, and we're excited to be back here again to cover another topic about polygamy and the FLDS religion.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people ask. On our last video, we were talking about the Canadian group, and we've had people ask a lot about the Centennial Park Group. So we are going to cover, a little bit about that.
Exactly.
And if anybody would like to hear more about what it was like for Sam growing up in polygamy, please like and subscribe. Or if you'd like to donate to our cause of creating compassion for these polygamous communities and helping people be able to share their stories, then you can donate in the button below.
And thank you all so much. To get right into it, there may be many of you that wonder, okay, what is this Centennial Park Group? Maybe you've never heard of them. That wouldn't be a big surprise. It's not a very large group.
No.
So it's very, very small, and they actually lived just over the hill, just south, I believe it is, from Short Creek. You drive out of Short Creek, you drive south about 5 minutes, if even that, and you're there.
But it's like a literal hill, like when you're in Short Creek.
It is a hill.
So you have Hilldale's on the Utah side, Colorado City's on the Arizona side. You have the street Uzona, which I will never get over how funny that is to me. The street Uzona splits the two states. And then, but you can't see any of Centennial Park when you are there.
Nope.
And so I don't think I've ever ventured on the other side of the hill. Like all the times that we've gone out there and stuff.
So
I don't think we've ever gone to Centennial Park.
Excuse me. I don't think we have either. It's not out of the way at all, but there's just not a whole lot to go and show someone, right? It might be worth our time next time, just so that you can say that you've been there. There is a small airport in that area, and I believe you would see Centennial Park on your way to the airport. It's very, very close to Centennial Park. So anyway, it's definitely something that is there, and if you're driving down the highway, you will see it.
Just don't blink.
But
I'm just kidding.
But it's very small, and it looks even more small from the highway because once you get back there, there's more homes and things that you can't see just driving by. But anyway, it's a small community, and they at one time believed and were part of the FLDS religion. So it's interesting because there's a lot of information out there about this group, but I grew up with a different feeling than the information I'm hearing about why they split off and why they were no longer a part of the FLDS religion.
Yeah, when I started looking up, I was like, I just want to get a little bit more, more of the history just for me to know because I didn't know a lot about it. And so as I was looking this up and I was talking to Sam about it, and he's like, some of these things are different, but that's going to be kind of fun to compare like what we found as far as people saying what happened and what Sam grew up knowing. So again, everything that we share on this channel is Sam's experience.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to probably know completely different stories or have heard a different version, or maybe were there and know exactly what happened because they were there. Please leave them in, leave comments or any information, or email us. We love it when we get more information on these things because all Sam can do is share his experience and what he knew.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that this information we found isn't correct. It very likely is 100% correct. And there's just a different side of the story that I heard growing up. So
yeah. Now, by the time you were born, they were already split, right?
Oh yes. Long before I was born, they were split, and I only knew them as the Centennial Park Group across over the hill. That was what I knew them as from the moment I remember.
And what were you told about them?
So I was told, this was the feeling that I got, was that they were a group that were a part of us. They were very much involved in the FLDS church until the point when Roy Johnson was on his deathbed. And Roy Johnson was the prophet before Rulon Jeffs. And then after Rulon Jeffs, of course, follows Warren Jeffs. So when Roy Johnson was coming to the end of his days here on the earth, there seemed to be some type of disagreement with the leaders that then started the Centennial Park Group of who should be the next leader, like who should become the next prophet. And I was always told that they didn't believe that Reuben Jeffs should be the next prophet, and that one of them was actually higher up in the, I guess, church hierarchy, and that it should have been them that followed Roy Johnson, not Reuben Jeffs.
And it wasn't really uncommon for, I mean, the FLDS are already a split off from the mainstream LDS church. Or they would say it's the other way around. But either way, like there's lots of split offs within Mormonism and from Joseph Smith, right? So the idea that, no, they're not the right prophet, we're going to go over here and create our own group isn't really like, it's not a foreign concept at all.
Oh no, there's so many branches and split offs and things that have happened so many times, right to the very beginning of the church when Brigham Young, after Joseph Smith's death, Brigham Young took one side and Emma Smith and her son took another side. Right from the very beginning, these split offs started happening.
Yeah, the RLDS. If anyone doesn't know about that,
yes,
that Joseph Smith's son became the next prophet for the RLDS.
Exactly.
So, yeah, lots of history of that. And so that's not really any surprise that someone would go over the hill with another group. But
isn't the first time.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the main gist of them that I had. We were taught to not really mingle or be involved with them. In a way, they were shunned because in our eyes, they had left the true church and were going and doing their own things and had then become apostates, which was one of the worst things you could possibly do in the eyes of the church. And so we would see them around once in a while. They would come over the hill.
That was going to be my question. I'm like, did they come to the big park? Like, did they bring their kids?
Yes.
Did they come to community events?
Not community of, well, not that I remember. I don't remember them coming to any of the events because they weren't invited. So, and it would have caused, I imagine, some problems with leaders of the church if they had come. But so we would see them just throughout the week. Sometimes they would come over and we would see them playing at the parks and things. They still dress in a unique way, but sometimes they would wear dresses with a short sleeve or something. Ooh. So in my mind as a young boy, of course, sheesh, these people were walking around, just almost naked in my eyes because of the way that we were taught of the importance of all the way to your wrists and ankles and neck, basically always covered. So it was pretty easy to pick them out, and sometimes they would do their hair a little bit differently and things like that. So it was pretty easy to pick them out in the community when they did come to visit. And there were still some members of those that believed in the Centennial Park Group that still lived within the Short Creek area.
Oh, so they weren't like completely shunned. You have to leave the community.
Right. There wasn't very many, but there were a few families throughout the community that no longer followed the church, but still lived there.
I can see you not wanting to okay, just because I'm not following that doesn't mean I want to have to lose my house and all that.
Right.
Although I did read that the FLDS church did try to get rid of their properties because it was all owned by the UEP.
Right.
Or the United Effort
Well, and that's
Plan.
why they had to go over the hill. Gotcha. Originally, it doesn't sound like that the church back in those days, when I was a young boy, tried to get rid of everyone's homes, because there were some people that lived in the town that obviously clearly didn't believe in the Warren Jeffs or Reuben Jeffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so we would see them come and then we'd see them shopping once in a while. We wouldn't turn them away. I remember working at a farm store out there where we would sell all types of different things for animal feed and saddles and different things like that. And they would come and buy from us and we wouldn't turn them away. Right. But we wouldn't try to have an extended conversation with them either about how their life is, right? So it was very, very quick conversations, kind of like we would have treated anyone outside of the community when shopping elsewhere. We didn't really mingle with them. Just
keeping it civil.
Right. So, but yeah, we definitely looked down on them, I would say, as a church because they had chosen, I thought, see, this information is new. Some of this information is a little bit different than what I was taught. But I thought that they had chosen to leave because they believed that they should be the next prophet. One of them, I think it was a Hammond or a Timpson.
Yeah,
So
both
thought that he should be the next prophet, and so they went elsewhere. But now tell us what it says here, though. This is a little bit different.
Yeah, I also have one other question before
Yes.
we move on. Did you have any family members that were on the other side?
Cousins and uncles.
I mean, I guess
And aunts and cousins. Yeah.
Cousins
lots
and
and lots of cousins.
as those words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, okay, I mean, I know everybody is somewhat related, but were they kept out of like family relationships? Like, were you allowed to have a relationship with your cousins that were on the other side of the hill? Or was it like, we're just going to avoid that family? We have plenty over on this side. So
in all my years, my long 18 years of growing up in Short Creek, I never once went into into a home over the hill. We drove over the hill at times just to kind of explore and see, and it kind of felt like we were driving through a haunted town of some sort because of the ideas we had in the back of our minds.
So it's happening on the other side.
Right, exactly. But I mean, never did we were never confronted by anyone over there, and I never went in any of the homes. So no, any type of relationship was nothing I ever had.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, like we said, obviously that's Sam's experience and just kind of what, like what the perception was and kind of what was passed down on your side, which is very interesting because obviously there's two sides to every story, right?
Oh, yes.
And
sometimes
then
more than two.
Sometimes, that's what I was just going to say. I'm like, and sometimes there's even more than that. From what I was reading, it was talking about the fact that there was a big debate on whether or not a disagreement over what was called was one-man doctrine. So do you want to explain what one-man doctrine is?
Yes. So basically, one-man doctrine is the idea that there is only one man on the earth at a time that is given all of the authority, all of the priesthood keys from God. And I, it's interesting that there was a big issue with this because, well, I think what happened is Roy Johnson took it to the extreme because that's the way it is in the mainstream LDS church as well, that there's one man who is the president, the prophet, and then there's the apostles under him and
his counselors
and the counselors and all of that. And it sounds like that's kind of the way it was in the early days of the FLDS church. But I never remember there being 12 apostles. But I do remember there being counselors, and it sounds like before I was born, there was there's a whole council, group, like a committee, a council of about 6 or 7 members, it sounds like. And that wasn't anything I was ever raised with because Roy Johnson passed away, and this split happened before I was ever born.
Do you remember Rulin did he have counselors?
Yes. See,
and did Warren?
See, that's the thing is Rulin definitely had counselors. And then when Warren Jeffs took over, it seemed like he wanted all of the power. So there were still bishops in communities that would kind of oversee, make sure that the people were being taken care of and that type of thing. But I don't remember there ever being actual. I'm trying to think. I don't remember there being any specific counselors, and if there were, it was for a very short time with Warren Jeffs.
And that might have also been why, like you hear, Warren was going back to the community to perform marriages and stuff because he believed he was the only person on earth that held those keys.
Oh,
right?
100%. Yes.
In the mainstream LDS, for those of you that aren't familiar, that even though the prophet holds all the keys, he gives authority to other people so that they can act in authority.
Exactly.
With those keys and use those keys, I guess is the best way. Like he has the keys, he holds the keys, and other people he gives authority to use the keys. And so that's why, there's sealers in every single one of the temples, and it's not a one-man show.
Exactly.
In the LDS in that sense where like everything has to be done by the prophet, where in the FLDS it sounds like it progressively got to be more and more like this one-man theory that Warren, by the time it got to Warren, he was the only man who could do anything just about, besides bishops.
And see, I would like, going back to the one-man doctrine.
Yeah.
From everyone that I have talked to personally including my own family, that knew Roy Johnson, they all speak very, very highly of him and just love him. And so it's almost hard for me to think that he was just trying to get all the power just because of the way he was talked about. He seemed like someone that wanted things done right, but that he was okay sharing the power. Unlike Warren Jeffs. Like he seemed like that type of person. So when I hear this, it makes me turn my head a little bit and wonder what was actually going on there. Like there must be more to the story than Roy Johnson just wanting all of the power.
Yeah, so in what we were finding, it was just talking about that in 1984, there were a couple other men on the council that opposed the one-man doctrine, and that was Marion Hammond and Alma Timpson. And those two opposed that, and basically they got called out by Johnson in February of 1984, and in front of the entire congregation.
I've heard of this meeting. I heard this was a very intense moment.
Yeah, he said, well, I guess I can do the quote. And it does have a source, but I did not print that part out. So, but it said, I want to say a few words to these men who sit here on the stand today. He turned to face J. Marion Hammond and Alma A. Timpson. The Lord gave you men 5.5 years to change your thinking on this principle of having one man holding the sealing powers in the earth at a time. And you've made a miserable mess of it by coming here and preaching over this pulpit that I was about to die because of my attitude towards this principle. So 6 days later, he said he's going to clean up the priesthood council, and he's basically threw them off the council is what it is saying. Now
that you read that, it's coming back to me.
Oh, okay.
That these men were, in a way, I know for anyone that watches this that are friends or that are not friends, that are fans of or respect highly these Brother Timpson and Hammond. I'm not bashing on them. I didn't know them personally, but from what I heard, they were almost like starting a rise up against Roy Johnson while he was sick. They were trying to come in and kind of take over and do what they wanted to do and kind of be in charge of the church when he was on his in his bed, very, very ill. So yes, I'm remembering this now. So he came back, and no one thought he would ever be able to come back to church because he was that ill and that he'd been in bed for a long time. And he showed up, and everyone was just completely shocked to even see him walk in this meeting. And Roy Johnson, I believe he even stood up to the pulpit.
That's what it says.
And said, no, I am still alive. I was the appointed prophet. You will not take over the church. And so, and I remember that. So now I'm remembering why everyone spoke so highly of Roy Johnson. It's not that he wanted to run the everything by himself. It's just that people were trying to rise up against him and overthrow him when he was sick.
Yeah, he said that from now on, I'm throwing you off my back. I'm not going to carry you anymore. So, yeah, so he threw him out. And then it said that they did, their attempts were made to evict residents siding with Hammond and Timpson. There weren't a lot of people that went with, it looked like in May, so a couple months later, the portion of Johnson's followers who were dismissed or left on their own held their first priesthood meeting just outside of town. On here, it's talking about them being called the Second Ward. For those of you who aren't familiar, in the LDS, a ward is a congregation, and it's in the mainstream LDS church, it's geographical. So there's an area, and then anybody who lives within that geographical area is a congregation, and it's called a ward. So they said that they named their group the Second Ward. Had you ever heard them be called that, though? Because that didn't sound familiar to me, that they were the Second Ward.
I had never heard that, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, back in those days, they probably used a lot of the similar terminology that is used in the mainstream LDS church, whereas when I was growing up, a lot of things had changed at that point. So it doesn't surprise me, but I never heard it called that. Just something else I wanted to point out that I find interesting is It seemed like after moving away from Short Creek and all of that, I ran into a few people that made it sound like they were from the Centennial Park Group, and that they highly respected Roy Johnson. And so that kind of made me think I guess, think even more on the fact that they just, it's hard to say. It's hard to say if they actually believed that he was a prophet or exactly what happened during that time.
Well, and it sounds like some people were kicked out by Johnson to be able, like, saying, okay, if you're siding with them, then you're kicked out. So who knows who was kicked out and who left on their own to follow. It sounded like it was a really small group. I don't have a number. But even now, I think their group is like 1,500 people total.
Right. It's nothing huge.
And they split off again, which is interesting. There is another one that moved to Salt Lake and has about 200 members. They broke after Hammond died in 1988. And then Timpson became the presiding priesthood leader. So even from that split, there is another split that was called the Third Ward.
Wow.
So, I mean, it would kind of help if they just like kept numbering themselves so you could like know how many split offs they are.
Know who was the first.
Yeah, you know who's
So who claims to be number one here?
So it's like each one, obviously they still practice polygamy. They still do a lot of the things, but like Sam was saying.
And they dress in a unique style still, but not like the FLDS. They dress a little bit more casual, but still unique.
So you definitely still be able to pick them out of a crowd if they were in the community.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you drove through Centennial Park, you would know what I'm talking about as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, someday we're going to go over the hill and we'll film it so that you can see Centennial Park for yourself. But,
yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, but if you'd like to hear more about what it was like for Sam growing up in the FLDS on the other side of the hill, then please like and subscribe. And if you would like to donate to our cause of bringing awareness and compassion to these communities, then you can donate at the button below. And yeah, thank you all, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you all. We'll talk to you soon.